Hey everyone, I'm Clue. Welcome back to some more So Dungeon 2 and my 10-hour challenge. So, the last sort of season, definitely barking up the wrong tree there. The idea definitely wasn't going to work. I was leveling nurses and mystics both in Dimension 1, spending, 3 hours plus getting them upscaled and just trying to snowball. The problem was that going from the mystics down to the nurses was quite substantial, because I ended with mystics on level at 25 and then nurses on about 12, which is a sizable difference in stats just from the extra 13 or so levels. So I had to scrap it. There was like 3 episodes, and I ended up accidentally deleting episodes, so it was a headache in itself. But I think the idea we have here is definitely a lot better, and it's definitely going to take us a lot further in terms of this challenge. I don't know, I would assume there's quite a bit of overlap between those of you who are viewing this video here and check out my streams or stream VODs, because the numbers are somewhat similar. But essentially, the latest So Dungeon stream was me trying Dimension 1 with this strategy, and in 2.5 hours, I think it was, I got Mystics to 24, so that means by the end of Dimension 2 they'll be 25, and I can transition to Nurses, as well as the Kitchen to level 4, Bag Resourcefulness to level 2, Pets unlocked, all around just a lot of extra stats through gold, through farming gold. Now, this run itself is already even better. So, obviously, if you practice something, you try it again and again, you're going to refine, you're going to be able to do it a lot better. So this run ended up being under 2.5 hours. I think it was 2:22 or something like that. And my kitchen is level 5, so if you look at the gold, it's 7,500 to get to level 4, and it's another 7,500 just to get from 4 to 5. So that's a substantial increase. Granted, the percent increase is not as big as you might want, but it still goes to show that with some refinement and optimization, I can really start pushing this run to the next level. So the idea of this run is essentially the same. Right now I am doing the early game, grinding up to unlock the mystics, and I've gotten that down fairly consistently, so it's quite different to my any percent run, which was Dimension 1, 100 floors in 26 or so minutes, and using that, I don't get the mystics till, well, technically I get the mystics earlier in the run, but I also get them later in the run, if that's what makes sense. Here, we've unlocked the mystics, and it's about the 17-minute mark, and that's consistent. Almost every run I've been doing with this strategy, I unlock the mystics around 17. It works out a lot better. The reason it's somewhat quicker in the any percent is because I do turn in quests, so that's sort of this big catapult towards gold gain, whereas here I just do soda junkies and the occasional carpenters, just cycling through getting enough gold to unlock the next step of the tavern, up to spending 100 gold on each upgrade, and then I try to go for 1,000 gold, unlock the blacksmith, sell all my resources, and I should have around enough to unlock the mystics and unlock the bed, which is really useful. I'm really glad that it's gotten down to a consistent strategy. You go from about 1 to 20 in terms of floors, just using the soda junkies, just recruiting as much as possible, and you get about enough gold on average at the 17-minute mark to unlock the mystics, and then, a few more minutes this run with 1 mystic just to stockpile enough gold to actually hire 6 mystics, and you're good to go. And it's just really good to know that there's some things in the run that are starting to fall into that consistent category, where I know if I were to reattempt this or go and try and do it, say, on stream the whole run, I'm still debating whether or not I will eventually be able to, but it is definitely good to see that there are parts of the run that have become heavily consistent. Again, I do think once we start to get to the end game again, it will be consistent. The idea of 2 runs per dimension is, something I don't think is going to change. There's no way for me to sort of fix that, because equipment, plays into the run a lot more than just levels like in the early game. So I know, so I get to Dimension 7, I'm going to have to spend a run gearing up, and then I can actually do a run with the gear, with the correct party, and then get the dimension done. In terms of this dimension, the run sort of breaks down into 3 segments. First off, we're obviously using soda junkies to get enough gold, unlock the mystics. This is done through running draw 1 to about 20 over and over again until we get enough resources to sell the blacksmith, or just enough base gold to unlock the mystics. After that, we unlock the mystics and we start to cycle them into the team. We're using them to farm gold and farm experience, but that's sort of a secondary effect. From this point on, once we do have the mystics unlocked, our major goal is to get as far into the dungeon as possible, get the dungeon boss done, and then we actually start farming gold. This is probably one of the major changes I've sort of done to the run, because we are settling into this idea of farming so that we can snowball. I know now through the proof testing run I did that I have a lot of excess time to play around with and to use towards actually unlocking and gearing up and scaling my party for the later dimensions. So what we're doing is we're just trying to push the dungeon as far as possible. Once we get to 40, we do repeat from 40 onwards. And the reason for that is so that we can actually unlock the stables. We need carrots to unlock the stables, build the stables, and get our whale pet. The whale pet isn't too necessary for this segment. It's needed for the final segment of the run, which is actually to power level the mystics up to 24. But it is still an important thing to make sure we unlock. And once we get the mana regen on the mystics at level 9, it doesn't really matter where we start from, because you can technically go infinite as long as you spread out who's casting, and that way they can regen. So we start from 40 as soon as we get to 40, and then we keep going over and over again until we either get carrots or obviously we beat the Dark Lord, and that way we can progress past, because we do end up going, I think, about 140, maybe 160. And the reason for that is because the gold gain past 100 is just so much more significant. I always thought that the fastest gold gain was from about 70 to 90. The reason for that is the 90 boss is a real pain, but it's actually a lot better to go as far as possible into the dimension. And the great thing about the mystics is the fact that their damage is set at 21. And because it has such a high base amount, you can actually clear all the way up to about 180 with no issue. You have enough damage to consistently clear out all the enemy groups as long as everyone casts. So this makes it really useful to actually farm, and you can sort of sustain yourself with heal stones and healing. But the optimal thing to do is to start the run at 91, because you start at 1 intervals. And the reason for that is because you want to skip the 90 boss, because the 90 boss is a real hassle. A, because of the burn damage means you have to take turns to heal, and again, it's already tight with the damage because you do need everyone to cast, but it is also just a pain in the ass, because if you take a tick of, say, the burn damage, and then all of a sudden the janitor on 100 can hit you. The other big important factor is to make sure everyone is above 29 HP, because that's how much the janitor on 100 can hit for. So if you have those two goals met, so the ability to heal through the healing stone, and obviously the base HP of 30 plus, you can effectively farm and get a ton of gold, which is what I do. Okay, so we've got enough carrots, we can build the stables, which is great. The other sort of mentality I've needed to correct is to actually invest in this run, so to speak. So usually I will just opt for finding gear, which is not the greatest thing to do. It actually is such a huge jump in speed to actually, make iron swords and level them up and just increase your base melee damage. So that's what I do. We start actually forging, we make 6 iron swords, we level them up just 1 level. It is a lot more cost effective to just go to the +2 rather than +3, because it's 3 healing stones, so that's only, 75 times 3, 150, 225 gold plus 50 to upgrade it. So, it's not a huge investment for 6 people, but once you get to level 3, it's 10 blue smithing crystals, which is 750 gold plus 100 gold, so it's 850. It's almost triple the gold investment. So we just make sure that we have 6 iron swords, get them all to +1, we unlock the stable, we also want to get a frying pan, that's the other big goal, and I am also going to pick up any gold shields I see, because again, I'm just trying to farm up gold. The more gold I can get in a shorter period, the better I will be. Okay, so we've gotten the Dark Lord down, which is great. Unfortunately, can't continue the run. I wish that was a little bit of a change, but it's not too much of a big deal. The only reason is because obviously it costs gold to hire mystics, and that's one of the biggest hassles, is the amount of gold it requires to hire mystics. I'd actually be able to do this run significantly quicker if we had a huge surplus gold, and it's another thing I'll have to unfortunately sit down and work out mathematically, but we'll go over that in a second. So right now the goal is still that second segment, farming up gold, unlocking all the upgrades we want, which at the moment is the bag of resourcefulness to level 2. This makes it easy to bring enough iron to get fully decked out in Dimension 2. We also want the kitchen to level 5. This is a huge health boost. And then we also want locksmithing. It's just a general perk because I do want to start taking advantage of warps. It will definitely help speed us up. And then just really invest in whatever we can. You know, buying blue smithing crystals to cheat gold in the next dimension, getting basic tavern upgrades to make it easier to find mystics. Overall, I ended up with a huge surplus of gold, so I get a lot of things accomplished. But now we're just on to leveling the mystics, and this is where it's a real pain in the ass, because so if I were to do, say, floor 1 to 19, I could do it in a minute. So, you know, that's roughly 20 times 6, so it's 120 experience in a minute. Or, as I do it, I go from 1 to 39 in about 3 minutes, which is obviously significantly lower because it's 2/3, yada yada yada. You can do the mental math. It's slower, and the reason for this is because I'm not recouping enough gold from doing 1 to 19 to actually rehire mystics. But we did get done. Again, ended at around 222, I think, with a huge surplus of gold. I ended up getting, I want to say 180. No, there we go. We've got, it's right on the screen, 230 blue smithing crystals, which is great. It's 180 for leveling up stuff in the next dimension, because there's 20% carry through, and then all the excess to sell. But yeah, so 2 hours and 22 minutes, a really fantastic start, just a great sign for this attempt.